Hello there, visitors. Thank you for clicking. Your stopping by is appreciated, as today we're taking a little tour through San Francisco's recreation in the game Garden Paws. Originally, the area was called Yerba Buena. Translated to Good Herb, it was the name of a Mexican settlement that would eventually become a bustling city of innovation. A small island in the bay still retains the name to this day and was used by the Navy throughout World War II for support for Treasure Island. San Francisco would become part of the United States officially in 1846, only a few years before the coastal port would find itself the center of attention. The popular boom was spurred on by gold found in the surrounding hills. Between January of 1848 and December of 1849, the population of San Francisco increased from 1,000 to 25,000. The ultra-greedy packed up their wagons and ships, traveling from across the world to strike it rich in the developing hotspot. No matter how much Mr. James Marshall, the carpenter from New Jersey who struck gold first, tried to keep it under wraps, the news traveled fast enough to bring over 300,000 new residents over the next few years from the East Coast, Mexico, and even China. Something similar would happen 150 years later when the personal computer arrived on the scene to create yet another gold rush in the dot-com era. The city seemed to attract the wildly ambitious and risk-taking individuals no matter what century it is. It's really a popular place for so many reasons. It's bustling but really quite small in relation. There are only 830,000 people that live within the city and the county of San Francisco itself. However, the entire Bay Area is home to more than 7 million residents, whichever are traveling in and out of SF daily for work or entertainment, making it the city planner's ultimate challenge mode. San Francisco is only 7 miles long by 7 miles wide, and due to its small size, it can really make it easy to see a lot of SF in just one day. San Francisco is constructed on more than 50 hills, even if only a handful of them are recognized by names for being quite historic places you might want to hit up while you're on vacation, such as Nob and Telegraph Hill, along with your choice of over 200 other historic landmarks, hence why choosing one of the most steep surfaces available on the original Garden Paws map. Some of these landmarks I've attempted to build within Garden Paws, a relaxing and chill sandbox games by developers Bit and Toast. Guessing many who clicked already know, but for those who don't, this is a PC and also now Nintendo Switch game that's a fantastic way to spend low-stress hours. In the story mode, you're a shopkeeper rehabilitating your grandparents' farm while you build up the amenities of the nearby city and its citizens through farming and foraging across a gorgeous map filled with vast varieties of resources, which you then craft into useful or just plain cute stuff. We're doing this one in creative mode since you can only imagine how long it would have taken to farm up the materials for this. Potentially a couple hundred hours, but the beauty of creative mode is access to pretty much everything the game has to offer. Plus, this game has Steam Workshop support for the ability to add asset mods other users or yourself have created. There's limitless ways to expand on the ultra-satisfying sandbox. When prospectors caught gold fever and hightailed it to California, San Francisco's port became packed with abandoned ships as an effect. With high demand to build the city booming, the ships were torn apart and repurposed into banks, businesses, and homes. Much of which wouldn't make it more than a few decades before a fire and earthquakes in 1906 destroyed a good amount of town. Some estimate around 70 to 80%. Although it was the fires that did about 90% of the damage, an unlikely hero helped the city escape: redwood trees. When the fire hit buildings made of redwood, which has a low resin content and a porous grain that takes on lots of water, they didn't go up in smoke, which salvaged parts of the city from total annihilation. Beyond the landmarks, there are 14,000 Victorian homes within San Francisco, the most famous being the Painted Ladies along Alamo Square. These houses used in many TV shows like Full House that have become synonymous with SF that many across the world know them. The homes were designed to show off the wealth of the Gold Rush period with turrets, excessive windows, and decorated roof lines. So a rendition of them made into this recreation in the city here. The houses actually came by their appearance in the colorist movement of the 60s. During the World War II era, they were a shade of full gray, but local artist Butch Kratom began painting homes in bright blues and greens, and that caught on. By the time the 70s came around, there were many bright homes in the city that remain today. One of the homes contains a small museum on its upper floor that's host to exhibitions relevant to the city, including a ticket the day the Golden Gate Bridge was open, and clothing from the 1800s. San Francisco prospered during the Great Depression. Throughout the rest of the U.S. and the world suffered from the collapse of the stock market and the ensuing economic recession, not one bank in San Francisco failed. In similar situations, even in recent years, it's proven the same economic resilience. The city even had resources to construct the Golden Gate Bridge and the Bay Bridge in the midst of the Depression. The Golden Gate Bridge isn't really red, or gold for that matter. The official color is International Orange, and it was not supposed to be the permanent color of the bridge. Suggestions of black and yellow stripes, as well as candy cane red and white stripes, were made by the U.S. military, believing it would make the bridge more visible in case of an attack. But the architect, Irving Morrow, chose International Orange as it was able to be seen in the fog and contrasted nicely with the surrounding landscape. It took only 4 years to build the Golden Gate Bridge, from 1933 to 1937. 120,000 cars cross the bridge every day. It even has its own website and Facebook, it's so famous. In 1867, San Francisco instituted America's first ugly law, which prohibited unsightly people from showing their faces in public, and it's since been repealed. I mean, could they have been more shallow with that? Oh, don't admit that you're narcissistic or anything, SF, sheesh. But alright, San Francisco is home to the slang sugar daddy. When sugar factory owner Adolph Spreckles pursued a much younger Alma de Bretteville in the early 1900s. It was her pet name for him, and we're still using it today, labeling relationships status all too common in the tech bros that never grow up. But believe it or not, we have Alma to thank for the Legion of Honor at the San Francisco Museum of Fine Arts, which the gallery building is loosely modeled after. The building is a full-scale replica of the Hotel de Somme in Paris, the Palais des Légions d'Honneur. I'm probably totally messing that up. The French government granted Sugar Daddy Spreckles permission to construct a permanent replica of the French Pavilion. Highly recommend a visit for the views over the nearby Golden Gate Bridge and the distant downtown skyline. The Hall of Antiquities displays ancient works from Egypt, the Near East, Greece, and Rome, including sculptures, figurines, vessels, jewelry, and carved reliefs. Another fun fact about San Francisco is that Irish coffee was popularized in the Fog City. In 1952, Stanton Delaplane, a travel writer for the San Francisco Chronicle, brought Irish coffee to the United States after drinking it at the Shannon Airport in Ireland. At the time, he worked with the Buena Vista Cafe, which perfected the delicious drink. There are over 300 coffee houses within the city boundaries of San Francisco. And in 1956, Giovanni Giotta opened the Café Trieste cafe shop where he sold the best coffee in San Francisco. It was there that Francis Ford Coppola wrote most of the Godfather trilogy. So it's no surprise then that the locals also love independent films. SF is home to 50 film festivals each year. Some are large international festivals. Others are small with very focused offerings, such as the Greek Film Festival, Jewish Film Festival, and the American Indian Film Festival. Opened as the Metropolitan Theater on April 23, 1924, with The Fighting Coward, a second-run attraction. It was built by Samuel H. Levin. In the mid-1950s, the Metro Theater was home to a just-emerging San Francisco Film Festival scene, and eventually upgraded to a first-run venue with bookings usually carefully chosen as so to maintain its image as one of quality and prestige. It continued to operate as a single-screen theater until its closure in October of 2006. And did you know that the first electric TV was invented in San Francisco in 1927 by Philino Farnsworth? His working lab was at 202 Green Street. You will never run out of restaurants to try here. At any given time, there's more than 3,500 restaurants open in SF. Many California culinary creations originated in San Francisco. The lengthy list includes Cobb salad, San Francisco sourdough bread, French dip sandwiches, popsicles, California-style pizza, and the Mission burrito. With all these amazing street and cafe creations popular among citizens like Joseph B. Friedman, who invented the bendy straw, inspired by observing his daughter's frustration when she tried to drink out of the straight straw. He came up with this invention to make it easier for her. He received a patent in 1937 and it would accompany many Mission burritos after. Until 2019 when plastic straws saw their demise by state legislature. To be honest, the paper straws get soggy, but meh, they still work and it's not that big of a deal. Guess what else got started here? Makoto Hagiwara of San Francisco is known as the creator of the modern-day fortune cookie. He was the first person in the US to serve it in his tea garden in the late 1890s. Though it's been frequently contested by Los Angeles bakers, it actually went to court in 1983, proving that Hagiwara was indeed the first by evidence inspection of the hot irons used to produce the original snack that was made popular in Golden Gate Park. The city is also home to the Ghiradelli Chocolate Factory, a rather obvious skyline icon for SF. Founded by and named after the Italian chocolatier Domenico Ghiradelli in 1852. It's the third oldest chocolatier in the United States. He originally started out as a general store owner in Stockton, but made the move to the city by the bay to expand. Fire would derail his business plans for a new one, the Cairo Coffee House, only to see that fail. Luckily, this man was not one for giving up in hardship. The next try was a charm with Ghiradelli and Girard, which would go on to be the famous name we know today, but still importing much more than just cocoa beans for chocolate. Its expansion over the years prompted it to be declared a landmark by 1965, and the focus became more of a tourist shop, where it directly retailed ice cream. As of 2019, they now feature over 15 different ice cream sundaes named after different historical references. This game doesn't include terraforming features, but there's a way to compensate by including landscapes into one's build. Platforms, pillars, and other connecting structures can give the natural look that gravity still exists. As you might note, many of the structures have platforms tucked underneath. They can sometimes be helpful to line up a foundation so it's straight across a landscape that isn't entirely flat. That way there won't be deviations in height or oddly spaced apart by the time one goes to put the roof on several stories. The grid snap will do most of the work for you. The platforms can be removed or covered later by shorter half walls, giving the appearance that the building is settled on the ground. Now continuing on with our tour. There are no real bells in the San Francisco Ferry building. There's just a large clock face and a recording of the Westminster Quarters. So basically, they're playing a recording of London's Big Ben at the Embarcadero throughout the day. It opened in 1898 as a replacement for a smaller wood building that couldn't support the growing traffic. Installation of the Bay Bridge and Golden Gate Bridge, along with mass use of the automobile, rendered the daily commute by ferry boat obsolete at the time. By the 1950s, the ferry building was barely in use. The historic interior of the ferry building structure was lost in 1955 when the building was converted to a standard office space. Today it exists as a large marketplace that features over 50 eateries, and ferry service is still running from its docks. Still considered one of the city's most popular attractions, with thousands of visitors 7 days a week. Nobody knows why exactly, but the famous sea lions that sunbathe off of Pier 39 and Fisherman's Wharf didn't show up until shortly after the 1989 earthquake. The businesses on the wharf didn't like how loud the sea lions were at first, but now they're a major tourist attraction. 10% of people in Sausalito get to work by water. Sausalito is a small city just across the Golden Gate Bridge. It has been called the French Riviera of San Francisco. If you've ever been there, you know why. My last experience was being invited to a Cars and Coffee there by a friend who happens to be a billionaire, but that's like the entire town, and it's pretty weird. It would only be people that privileged that would get to do the Bay tour as their commute, while the rest of us peasants can sit on the 101 freeway. I just hid my not-so-exotic car off to the side and gawked at the collector cars that don't belong outside of a museum, but they were parked in front of an Italian bistro that hosts this monthly. If you're into cars at all, the city has a good scene. After New York, Moscow, and London, San Francisco is the fourth city in the world with the highest population of billionaires per square meter, despite having a much smaller population than the other three cities. As it turns out, San Francisco has more dogs than children, 10,000 more to be exact. Seems like the local millennials are more into fur babies. Some residents make up a strong community as the Zoological Society, resulting in the creation of the San Francisco Zoo. The facility is a 100-acre area which housed more than 1,000 individual animals, representing more than 250 species by 2016. In 1921, it was just a mere children's playground, but by 1929, Fleischhacker Zoo. Most of the exhibits were populated with animals transferred from Golden Gate Park, and it was developed as part of a Depression-era program through the 30s and 40s. It would go on to adopt the name the San Francisco Zoological Gardens by 41, after more than $3.5 million was spent on the original exhibits. Considering the time period, that was a hefty sum, but it's developed steadily over the years with the aid of the Zoological Society. Noted as the birthplace of Coco the gorilla, and since 1974, the home of Ellie, the oldest black rhinoceros in North America. The hand-carved carousel and the little engine train that puffs away around the acreage both originated in 1905 before it was officially a zoo, so you get a big dose of history along with your animal adventures. Looking towards the skyline, we have the TransAmerican Pyramid. It is one of the tallest structures on the skyline, topped only by the Salesforce building. In my mini San Francisco, it's been renamed Green Tech. It wasn't exact as I might like, but parts of the fun in building a Garden Paws is the challenge of using the pieces allotted to recreate what exists in reality. It's just more fun to add gardens to a giant greenhouse-like structure. Although the tower is no longer TransAmerica Corporation headquarters, it's still associated with the company and depicts the company logo. It now houses 48 floors of office and retail space. San Francisco's history is very interestingly interconnected. The same Fleischhacker responsible for the zoo was also the one to suggest the expenditure of Lilly Coit's donated fortune for the construction of a tower on Telegraph Hill. Coit was one of the more eccentric characters in history of the North Beach and Telegraph Hill, smoking cigars and wearing trousers long before it was socially acceptable for women to do so. She was an avid gambler and often dressed like a man in order to gamble in males-only establishments that dotted North Beach. 4 years after her death, the Coit Tower would open as a place for visitors to enjoy the best views of the city. Imaginerds is an enlarged version of the tower refitted for creative types in the spirit of Coit herself. In this mini SF, the Animal House is a tinier Millennium tower, which has become famous for the unfortunate reason that it is rapidly sinking into the earth, requiring a massive building rescue effort to drive support piles far underground to bedrock to re-support the structure's weight. Perhaps one of the area's biggest blunders in building for its extensive development history, so it makes the list of skyline attraction amongst the wonders built in a previous century. Just conjures up that saying that they don't make them like they used to. News has broke this very week that after construction has started to drive piles into the bedrock to correct for their sinking of the building, it has sunk yet another inch in barely a month's time, now halting the correction. This one's really turned into a conundrum for the city given the building's height of 645 feet. Well, originally, but it's lost more than a foot off its height, and it's leaning almost 2 feet at the top of the building. It is the 6th largest building in the city, but the tallest of the residential towers. What can be learned from such a scary and expensive situation is that development is serious business, and it doesn't mix well with local politics when obvious potential flaws can be overlooked. That covers the main landmarks that were recreated with the pieces in the Garden Paws game currently, but I've seen the spoilers and already know there's some additions from it that just have to be included. The bug lab in Green Tech is going to be so much cooler studying the species of butterflies about to be added. Thanks Christina and Daniel at Bitten Toast. They take community suggestions and make game magic that delights us. And that's been very different from the AAA gaming experience. It's inspired me to support more independent development because these game makers deserve the love for all the love you can tell is put into a game like Garden Paws. The forest below is like the Santa Cruz Mountains. I could turn it into a bit of a campground because eventually my goal is to fill up this entire creative server with stuff. So far there's quite a bit of development including a raceway, resort, and a large greenhouse display. Suggestions for what you might like to see next? Drop in the comments. Thank you for sticking around. I hope that you enjoyed the tidbits and info about San Francisco. Maybe even thought up a bucket list for your visit? Definitely didn't have time to go through or build all the amazing stuff that one can find here. But I'm pretty sure that there's something for everyone. Down to Ripley's Believe It or Not Museum by Pier 39, or feeling shady, Alcatraz is an awesome day trip too. We hope to see you in SF someday. Take care all. Bye-bye.